It's been almost 7 years since I've last reviewed a Meshify enclosure from Fractal Design. Let's change that. This is the smaller one, and number 2. And this one is the XL. I really do hope to experience some gaming. I really do appreciate the double boxing, the regular Meshify, and the big one. I mean, the size difference between the two boxes is pretty significant. The XL is definitely wider and longer, but at least they are the same height. I love seeing this perspective for the size difference because that tells me I'm definitely more of a Meshify 3 type of guy because the XL is just way too big. And if you like to display your enclosure beside your monitors in the gaming space, the Meshify 3 size-wise is absolutely perfect. It's not too wide, it's not too tall. It's actually fairly compact lengthwise. I cannot say the same thing about the XL model. This thing is just way too long. It's like a bus. But if you're into that, occupying different cooling configurations, having lots of breathing room for your components, this thing is perfect. But it's just not for me. You can also see by the interior, the XL version is really, really long. Like this is where the motherboard, ATX motherboard ends, and the rest of the space is not just for really long graphics cards, like good luck filling that space, but to give you optional side ventilation and kind of a more roomy interior. Here's what the 3080 looks like inside. It is absolutely tiny compared to everything else that is available to us. To be honest, I love how compact the Meshify 3 is, going back to the roots of what was originally revealed, the Meshify C. I don't mind that this case does not support a 360 AIO at the top. You can still mount one, a 360 radiator at the front, reusing the fans or relocating those fans somewhere else. But this is exactly the configuration this case is designed for. A good air cooler that is close to that front airflow delivery. With the GPU installed, it is so close to the front panel, which I would say is going to be really beneficial for blower style GPUs. And I would definitely recommend you add at least one exhaust fan for our CPU cooler just to help with that horizontal column of air. And that column of air is phenomenal in cooling your hardware. The Meshify 3 is one of the best airflow enclosures that I've ever tested, coming actually neck and neck to the Torrent and the Torrent Compact, which makes sense because those cases are also very similar in the airflow delivery from the front. And it seems like that Shroud at the front helps the GPU temperatures as well, because again, this is an absolute chart topper. I retested the configuration with the fans running at 50% speed because they're incredibly quiet, and the performance was still phenomenal both on the CPU and the GPU side. So if you care about performance and also silence, make sure that you lower the speeds because they are incredibly quiet. It is so quiet. Now the cases are absolutely loaded with features and the price points reflect that. We're starting at $139 as the base price for the Meshify 3, goes to $159 for the RGB version, and $219 for the Ambience Pro RGB edition, which is a lot of money for a tiny compact mid-tower. And it gets even more ridiculous for the XL model, top of the line, topping at $250. Ouch. Ouch, 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 ouch. But hey, it has a startup animation, it has a web-based lighting and cooling utility, and a beautifully integrated power supply dust filter that blends with the case foot. Luckily, the only real difference between the three models is the RGB. So they all come with 140mm fans. The RGB version comes with the RGB fans, and the Ambience Pro edition comes with RGB fans and also that ambient strip at the front and on the side of the enclosure, plus the Adjust Pro hub. Otherwise, the performance should be identical between all three models, and you just don't get the Adjust Pro hub on the lower tier models. It's just with the Ambience Pro. How cool is that? The case has a startup lighting animation. Check it out. Absolutely gorgeous, and then my default lighting kicks in. Love it. I also love how the power button is illuminated corresponding to the colors you choose, which is awesome and tasteful. And the I/O has a USB Type-C with 20 gigabits per second, so full USB 3.2 Gen 2x2, and we have those fast USB-A ports as well. I appreciate Fractal's approach to side panel installation and removal. Like this plastic pull tab is very convenient to remove the side panel easily, and we also have this screw hole so you can secure the side panel to the frame. Plus, I appreciate the alignment pieces on the panel, so reinstalling the glass is worry-free, it's not gonna fall out. And in practice, this mechanism for the side panel installation is actually quite convenient when you want to compress certain cables. But fortunately, we have so much room here behind the enclosure. You don't necessarily have any bulges sticking out, and the side panel closes without any resistance. The front panel definitely reminds me of a Meshify enclosure. It has that wrinkled paper look. It is slightly more curved, but I don't like how shiny it is. It sounds like a stupid complaint, I know, but I wish it was matte. At least it is easily removable with the little connectors over here for your RGB. And there is no dust filter. The metal mesh itself will be your dust filter. And behind here, we have three 140mm RGB fans. They're looking gorgeous. Unfortunately, the white one looks even worse, in my opinion, because in most lighting situations, it just looks like the front panel is bent and is broken and like maybe got damaged in the shipping. And you don't notice the intentionality behind this crumpled paper look. Because if you're trying to show shape, white is the least preferred color, man. But let me know if you agree. The fan bracket Fractal is utilizing here is absolutely brilliant. It's only sitting here with just 2 screws. It sits on just 2 notches at the bottom, and here you can see uninterrupted access for our airflow, and these fan brackets, the left and right ones, can be converted to support smaller fans, 120s, just again, to have the least amount of resistance on airflow with the metal frame. Now, because of the size difference, airflow potential is obviously different. Although for the front, it is identical on both the XL and the non-XL versions. So it's really the top and the side ventilation that's way different on the XL model versus the smaller one. The top panel has no screws, can be slide out like this, or you can use the pull tab, which is slightly easier. It has that built-in metal mesh. It's not ideal for dust filtration, but this is for exhaust side anyway, so that's not that big of a problem. And here we do have our removable fan bracket for up to a 280mm radiator. We have 2 captive thumb screws and a very good mechanical design where the bracket slides in from the top and aligns with these little notches on both sides, so you know exactly how to, put it back together. And it is a structural piece because without it, this whole corner over here is very, very loose. And of course, the XL version will just accommodate way more cooling. So a 420 at the top is absolutely not a problem, and it utilizes the exact same mechanism for the bracket. Very convenient and easy to install. I am loving all the small innovation that Fractal is pulling here, both for cable management and for our drive storage. So on the drive side, we have 4 individual brackets. Right now, they're configured to support 2 3.5-inch drives, but just a simple reconfiguration on one of the sides. Now this lets us install 2 SSDs on this bracket, saving up all this additional space in between the 2 hard drive capacity storage things. And if you're not using any hard drives, you can simply take these brackets off. And Fractal is obviously thinking about the user experience because the screws are captive and they stay with the bracket so you don't lose them. And each bracket is also labeled left or right, so you don't confuse which one goes where. And I do love how the hub is integrated in the back here with a proper 90-degree USB cable, and it's just simply held in with Velcro. Awesome. While on the cable management side, normally we see some form of cable channels or Velcros, and here Fractal Design is doing something different with a plastic retention clip that has a bit of a height adjustment, so you can pass either thin or thicker cables on the left or the right of this retention clip, and you can all raise them together and push them down in order to secure everything that's underneath it. Pretty clever. I also love these double-sided Velcros that can extend outwards if you want to, let's say, route your USB cables and secure them to the back of the enclosure. We have 3 of them, or you can push them back in if you need additional space here to hold your 8-pin or something. Man, you gotta love the attention to detail here. Look at how beautifully routed the front cables are, so they are not going to interfere with our top fan bracket. I like the new Shroud design. It blocks off the power supply, and it looks way better than having a standard rectangle cut across towards our front fans. It also gives you almost this uninterrupted access towards our GPU airflow, although depending on how fast these fans go, it's going to create a little bit of a turbulence pocket right underneath the graphics card over here, but still, I think this is definitely the way forward. This single large cutout above the motherboard is brilliant because it allows you to route the cables exactly where they need to be. This cable cover is beautifully designed. It is slightly flexible if you need the additional extension to like pass certain cables, but it's also removable and it doesn't interfere with proper bending of a nice thick 24-pin cable. And of course, the interior of the XL is just so much longer. The Meshify 3 would end right about here, but because of the additional length, we have all this additional cooling capacity for the front and the side. Like you can see here, there's a drain port and mounting locations for our pump. Unfortunately, power supply clearance on the Meshify 3 is artificially limited by these plastic clips. There's the second one, because technically there is room for power supplies longer than 180 millimeters, and my Be Quiet unit is 195, but it bumps into those plastic clips and cannot be installed. But it could have installed without any issues if those plastic clips were not there. I would say power supplies up to 200 millimeters could have definitely fit with cables, you know, just making enough clearance versus this plastic shroud, but we are artificially limited by these two stupid plastic clips. Fortunately, this is not a problem for the XL model because power supplies up to 230 millimeters are supported here. But weirdly, these plastic clips are slightly longer on the Meshify 3 versus Meshify 3 XL. One of my least favorite things about the interior is how our PCIe cables are routed, because you have to go through the cable cover on the right side. There are no cutouts on our power supply shroud. Looking at it from this top angle doesn't seem to be an issue, but seeing it from this view really reveals the cable, I feel like, too much, and also the cutout behind the cable cover is way too little. So it was actually very difficult for me to pass my single 8-pin PCIe cable just to power this GPU. So imagine having to route at least 3 of these. That's going to be annoying. I feel like this is one of those annoying compromises that they might fix later, but also in their product images and product photography, you can clearly see they're trying to hide that GPU power cable because it does not look good in reality. And honestly, I don't know if I would gravitate towards the Ambience Pro Edition just for the hub, because it is with USB-C connectors, which is proprietary to what Fractal is doing with their RGB accessories. So this is really good for adjusting things with the web utility software, but not really future-proofing because you can't use this with any other RGB components outside of Fractal's ecosystem, you know? But I do appreciate on how it's mounted. Simple Velcro, and boom. No screws necessary. Now, I do appreciate Fractal's approach to a web-based utility to configure both lighting and fan RPM, which is unheard of when it comes to enclosures. Like, we've seen that from Wooding with keyboards, but not on the enclosure yet. Aside from updating the firmware, I haven't stumbled upon any hiccups or issues. So let's go into the lighting hub. And here it's very important that you can see which devices are connected. So those 3 front fans, I have the Meshify 3 enclosure and then not Meshify 3 XL, because the number of LEDs on the side and on the front panel would be different. So being able to visualize what's connected is actually very, very important. Also important are all these lighting presets. Not only are they reflected immediately once you activate them in the web-based utility, but all of them are actually pretty gorgeous in terms of the vibrancy, the uniformity, the slight roll off between the colors. It's all very, very pretty. This is glistening ice. This is pink sapphire. Pink sapphire looks gorgeous. I love the animation. It's all quite nice and smooth. The lunar mist gives us proper white. I love it. Mystic Night, beautiful pink and purple gradient, and Campfire. This one's awesome because it gives you a little bit of that sparkling kind of like twinkling feel. While the cooling tab is not as straightforward as setting your RPM and that's it, because you can see this feature depends on the input signal from the PWM connector on the motherboard. So right now my motherboard PWM signal is at full power, and the only way for me to lower the RPM of these fans in the software is to lower this graph over here to, let's say, about maybe 50%, boom, and click apply. And that PWM signal will stabilize at 50% power. As you can see, it is dropping. So it's dropping in real time, which is awesome again. And we have 4 ports available in case you are connecting more accessories down the line. But I wish that this cooling graph was a little bit more straightforward. As much as I like the web-based control, I would still prefer a physical switch on the case itself to switch between different modes and different colors and stuff. But I understand, given we have, what, 3+ models of the enclosure, that going the web-based route eliminates the need for additional tooling, for additional buttons, etc. But Phanteks has figured that out in the past by switching the reset switch for the little cyclone for the RGB illumination, but not with Fractal. So the Meshify 3 on paper is like my perfect mid-tower. It's compact, it can do a lot of things, it's airflow focused, while the XL version covers the other ground of, like, if you want to do more water cooling, if you need something bigger, it's there. And everything from a functionality point of view and the user experience, it is almost perfect. I love the integration of the web-based adjust for lighting and cooling, and it's kind of well done. You don't have to necessarily fight it. It's just there, it works. All the profiles are saved directly onto the hub. But my 2 complaints. Number one is the front panel. I just don't like the look. I wish that they integrated something with the fabric like we saw with the Ridge or the Mood that gets it a little bit more on elevated space when it comes to trying to fit this in a modern work environment, in a modern like gaming environment. Even though the RGB takes it away from that like clean look, it is done so well here that I feel fabric would have worked pretty well too. Especially when we're talking about cases in mid 100s to over $200, then yeah, I was expecting something a bit more special for the front panel. And my second major complaint is with power supply compatibility, especially on the smaller model, because it is artificially limited. I don't know how that would get past the quality control and the design stages, because you can still fit larger power supplies in there as long as your cables allow proper exit, it'll be fine. But no, you're limited to 180 millimeters unless you chop off those plastic clips yourself. Otherwise, this is almost the perfect enclosure for 2025, especially with the little innovation things that they've implemented for the drive storage and cable management that actually works. I'm Dmitry, thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one, and let me know what you think of the new Meshify.